I never expected to find out that my life had quietly been planned for me in millions of dollars, and that the family I thought I knew so well had spent years keeping me in the dark. It happened on Thanksgiving, the kind of day where gratitude is forced and smiles are rehearsed. My grandfather, with that stoic, distant smile that always made me feel like I wasn't enough, leaned back in his chair, looked at me with his pale blue eyes, and asked, "How do you spend your $3,400,000 trust fund?" I blinked. I swallowed. I whispered, "What trust fund?" And something inside me broke. Something I hadn't realized had been silently corroding me for years: the betrayal, the lies, the absence of honesty from people I loved most. Before I begin, if you've ever been betrayed, I hope you stay with me till the end. And please like and subscribe. Your support truly means more than you know. I had always been the obedient granddaughter, the quiet one, the one who followed rules, smiled when asked, and kept secrets tucked tightly under my ribs. My sister, June, had always been the golden child, with my mother fawning over her achievements and my father praising her every move. I, on the other hand, was careful not to make waves. Careful to step aside when they needed a hero or a trophy. Careful not to expect love. But Thanksgiving morning shattered that illusion. I had arrived early, as I always did, carrying a homemade pie my mother would barely glance at before commenting it was good, but could be better. June had already claimed the kitchen, directing the cook on what side dishes were acceptable. She laughed easily, a sound I was never allowed to make freely because I wasn't the favored one. She didn't notice me, not really. Not until my grandfather's voice cut through the air. He smiled. The kind of smile that always made me feel like he saw right through me, and said the words that would ignite a storm. "How do you spend your $3,400,000 trust fund?" For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. I looked at him, the man who rarely spoke to me beyond polite nods or half-hearted advice. The man who never hugged me as a child or told me he believed in me. He asked it again, like he knew I was pretending not to hear. "How do you spend it, Emily?" My hand shook slightly as I set the pie down. My voice trembled. What trust fund?" The silence that followed was heavy, like a curtain falling on my entire childhood. I could feel all the eyes of my family on me, my mother's jaw tight, June's eyebrows raised in shock, my father leaning back as if bracing for something he couldn't anticipate, and then I saw it. The first hint that my grandfather's coldness had always been something more than distance. It was not indifference. It was protection, for me, for the one he believed would be capable of more than my family would ever allow. The conversation that followed was a dance of deception and exposure. My mother tried to smile, but it was brittle. "Emily, honey, surely you knew." She trailed off, her eyes darting to June, who was frozen, pale. I shook my head. I didn't know anything. No one told me. Her lips tightened. "We assumed." "Assumed? You assumed?" That's what my life was worth. "Your assumptions?" I whispered, my voice trembling, not with fear, but with the raw, burning truth of years spent unseen. My grandfather watched me. He didn't intervene. He only nodded once, faintly, almost imperceptibly, as if to say, "You tell them," and I did. I began slowly, carefully, recounting everything I had done that had gone unnoticed. Every secret achievement, every quiet struggle they had ignored. I spoke of the scholarships I'd earned without their guidance, the years of work I'd put into building my own career, the side business I had created quietly in my spare time. I spoke of the time I had lent a friend money they never returned, the mistakes I'd made, and the lessons I had learned without their approval. With each word, the room shifted. Their arrogance, their assumption of control, their belief that I was insignificant crumbled. June's mouth opened, then closed. She couldn't form the words fast enough to mask the shock. My mother's hands trembled as she gripped the tablecloth. My father leaned forward, a frown creasing his face, and all the while, My grandfather sat back, cold as ice, letting the truth of my voice do the work he had always known it would. Then came the revelation, the numbers, the exact amount in the trust fund. $3 million for $100,000 untouched, growing quietly in my name for years while my family believed I was unworthy, incapable, or too naive to handle it. I looked at them slowly, my voice soft but unwavering. You hid this from me, from everyone, and you thought I would remain small, unaware, obedient. But I am not. I could feel the room constrict around me. June's face had turned red, not with anger, but with panic. My mother's eyes darted nervously, and my father sat rigid, silent, as though he was attempting to reconstruct the life he had always assumed I'd follow. The storm in the room wasn't about the money, it was about power, control, the betrayal of every choice I had made while they assumed I was nothing. I continued carefully, exposing the ways my family had attempted to manipulate my life. Hidden instructions to my grandfather, whispered conversations behind my back, attempts to steer my decisions and my relationships. Each revelation landed like a silent punch, yet I spoke gently, almost poetically, letting their guilt and shame seep through without a single raised voice. And then, just as the room seemed ready to collapse into chaos, I paused. I let my hands rest on the table. I met my mother's eyes, my sister's, my father's, and I smiled softly, almost sadly. You believed I didn't notice. You believed I didn't see your whispers, your smirks, your assumptions. But I did, and now I have choices. My mother's lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. June's hands shook, her pride cracking. And my father, the man who had always been my silent judge, finally understood the gravity of underestimating me. Then my grandfather, cold as ever, leaned forward slightly and said one sentence that froze the room. This is why I left it to her. Not you, not him. Her. The words hung like a bell tolling in silence. And for the first time, I felt something I had never allowed myself: power. Not arrogance. Not vindictive triumph, just the quiet knowledge that I could now reveal everything they had hidden, without losing myself in the process. And then the phone rang. It was June. She was frantic. Emily, wait, you can't. But I had already made my choice. I stood, calm, poised, and looked at each of them in turn. My voice was low, deliberate. You thought keeping secrets could control me. But the truth always finds a way to be known, and with that, I walked out of the room. I didn't know yet how far I would go with this revelation. I didn't know the lengths I would take to expose the betrayal fully. All I knew was that the quiet storm I had carried for years was finally beginning. I couldn't sleep that night. Not a single minute. My head was pounding with the weight of everything I had just discovered, everything I had just revealed. The trust fund wasn't just money, it was the silent testament that my grandfather had always believed in me, even when my own family had tried to diminish me. And the bitter truth, my family, the people I had loved and trusted most, had tried to shape my life without my consent, thinking I wouldn't notice. I kept replaying the Thanksgiving morning over and over in my head, my mother's forced calm, June's panicked face, my father's unreadable expression, and my grandfather sitting back, letting the truth spill like a slow river of fire. And then it hit me. The betrayal was deeper than money. It was years of hidden whispers, of manipulation, of assumptions that I would remain small, invisible, obedient. Before I begin, if you've ever been betrayed, I hope you stay with me till the end. And please like and subscribe. Your support truly means more than you know. I decided the next day I couldn't confront them openly. That wasn't my style. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't let them see my anger. Instead, I would expose their betrayal in the quiet, subtle way they had never anticipated. I started with June. Her phone buzzed constantly, and I could see the messages she had sent my grandfather, my parents, even mutual friends, trying to assert control. She didn't even know I had access to everything. I had quietly requested copies of the financial statements for the trust, traced patterns in their communications, and found the ways they had tried to manipulate my inheritance. Assuming I was too naive to notice, I sent a single message to June. Everything you did is documented. The truth will come out soon. I didn't expect a reply. She panicked anyway. The next days were a careful dance. I attended family dinners, smiled at my mother, listened to June brag about her latest accomplishments, all while I silently observed the cracks in their facade. Every smile I gave, every laugh I let slip, was calculated, not cruelty, but a subtle reminder that I had not been broken by their betrayal. One evening, my mother tried to corner me in the living room. Her voice was trembling, her carefully constructed composure failing. "Emily, you don't need to play these games. We only wanted what's best for you." Asterisk, I let out a soft laugh, one that carried neither mockery nor apology. "Games? Mom, I've been playing your game my entire life. I've obeyed, I've hidden, I've stayed quiet, and look where it's brought me." Asterisk, her eyes narrowed. "And now you want revenge?" she asked, her voice almost pleading. I shook my head. "Not revenge, exposure, transparency, just truth. That's all." Her hands trembled. She looked at June, who avoided my gaze entirely, and I realized something crucial. They were finally afraid. Not of confrontation, not of shouting, not of my words, but of the quiet, inevitable unraveling of the carefully constructed story they had told themselves about me. I began subtly revealing truths to mutual friends and distant relatives, just pieces at a time. Not maliciously, not vindictively, just enough to let them realize that the world outside their house saw the deception, the favoritism, the betrayal. June called me one night, her voice shaking with desperation. "Emily, why are you doing this?" It's just money. You don't need to ruin everything." I let her voice tremble for a moment before replying softly, "It's never been about the money. You've spent years trying to control my life, hiding the truth from me, shaping me into someone I'm not. This is about justice, about balance, about letting the truth breathe." I could hear her sobs through the phone. For once, she was powerless. My mother, meanwhile, began avoiding me, pretending to be busy with errands, with friends, anything to escape the tension I had created. And in that absence, I found strength. Every calculated smile, every quiet visit to my grandfather, every decision I made reinforced the truth. I was in control now. And then came the call that made my heart skip. It was my grandfather. His voice was colder than usual. "Emily, I've watched you carefully. You're handling this well, better than I expected. But remember, there are consequences to exposing the family. Make sure you're ready." I froze for a second, not with fear, but with understanding. He had always been distant, always been cold, but he trusted me enough to leave the money in my name, knowing I would see through the lies. And now he was giving me a subtle warning: tread carefully. I nodded silently to myself. I was ready. Then the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. I discovered emails my mother had sent, warning relatives not to support me, painting me as ungrateful and greedy, and trying to undermine my credibility. The betrayal ran deeper than I had imagined. Not only had they hidden the trust fund, but they had plotted to ensure I never benefited from it fully, emotionally or socially. The realization struck me like a cold wind. My subtle, poetic revenge wasn't just about revealing the money. It was about exposing the hypocrisy, the manipulation, the selfishness that had poisoned my entire family dynamic, and I had all the pieces. I carefully planned the next family gathering. This time, it would not be Thanksgiving. This time, it would not be a simple dinner. I would reveal everything. The emails, the messages, the hidden attempts to manipulate me. And I would do it quietly, elegantly, without raising my voice, letting the weight of truth do what anger never could. I rehearsed in my mind every word, every gesture, every pause. I wanted them to feel the shock, the regret, the shame. I wanted them to realize that their betrayal had consequences beyond money, that their deception, their favoritism, their cold manipulation was now visible to the world, and they could no longer hide behind it. And then, just as I was ready to execute my plan, a message came from June, Emily. They found out about the emails, about the truth you've been quietly exposing. You need to be careful. Mom is planning something. I read the words twice. And then, slowly, a smile curved across my lips because for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid because for the first time in my life, I realized they had underestimated me. They had always assumed I would stay quiet, obedient, small, but I was neither small nor silent anymore, and the revelation they feared was only just beginning. I woke up that morning with a strange sense of calm. The tension that had gripped me for weeks, the fear, the anger, the restless nights was gone, replaced by clarity. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to accuse. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to let truth speak for itself. Before I begin, if you've ever been betrayed, I hope you stay with me till the end. And please like and subscribe. Your support truly means more than you know. The day of the gathering arrived. My family, unaware of the storm I had quietly been preparing, arrived dressed in their perfect Sunday best smiles. June strutted in, her eyes glinting with that familiar superiority, convinced she had already won whatever war I was waging. My mother followed, her lips tight, trying to hold her composure. My father walked behind, proud and cautious. And my grandfather, he simply observed, his cold eyes fixed on me, waiting for the moment I would act. I started with small stories. A few subtle mentions of accomplishments they had ignored, friends who had praised my work, opportunities they had refused to believe I could earn. Each sentence landed softly but sharply, like arrows hidden in velvet. June shifted in her seat, her confidence faltering. My mother's hands twitched, unable to hide the anxiety creeping across her face. Then, I revealed the first email. It was from my mother, written years ago, trying to manipulate my grandfather, painting me as unworthy, suggesting the trust fund be withheld. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream. I simply read it aloud, calmly, letting each word linger in the air. The room went silent. June's face drained of color. I don't. She stamered. My mother tried to interrupt, to explain, but I stopped her with a soft lift of my hand. Let me finish, I continued, pulling out another email. Another message. Each one a piece of their conspiracy, their favoritism, their attempts to control my life. I paused occasionally, letting the weight of the words settle over them, letting the realization creep in slowly. You believed I wouldn't notice, I said softly, my voice trembling, almost intimate. You believed I would remain small, obedient, silent. But I see everything. I always have. June's hands were shaking now. My mother's jaw was tight, her eyes glossy with unshed tears. My father's hands clenched into fists, the first real sign of emotion he had shown in months. And my grandfather, sitting back in his chair, let out a faint exhale, a signal that this was exactly what he had envisioned. Then came the final reveal. I slid the trust fund statements across the table. $3,400,000, untouched, growing quietly in my name for years. The numbers glimmered in the soft light, a tangible proof of their underestimation, of their silent betrayal. This is the life you tried to control, I whispered, letting the paper settle like a quiet bomb. And this is the life that was mine all along. My mother's lips parted, then trembled. Emily, we only what? I asked gently. Only tried to dictate my happiness? Only tried to manipulate my life? Only tried to assume I would be weak? June's voice cracked. We never thought, you never thought I would see. You never thought I would act. But I have, I said softly. And now you will see what happens when the truth is spoken. The rest of the afternoon was quiet. Not awkward, not angry, but heavy with realization. I didn't gloat. I didn't mock. I simply existed in the space I had always deserved visible, unbroken, unafraid. Later, my grandfather came to me privately. You handled it well, he said. Better than I imagined. Remember, Emily, power is quiet. Control is subtle. Justice is not loud. I nodded. I understood. This was my revenge, not loud, not violent, but precise, emotional, silent. Perfect. Weeks later, the ripple effects continued. Relatives who had always listened to my mother's words began asking me questions, seeking clarity, admiring the life I had built. Friends I had helped quietly throughout the years reached out. And most importantly, my family learned that betrayal carries weight. Not the explosive kind that shatters physically, but the kind that lingers in silent regret. I didn't need to rub it in. I didn't need to parade my success. They felt it. In every glance, in every hesitation, in every unspoken acknowledgement that they had underestimated me for far too long, and me. I was free from their manipulation, free from their expectations, free from the quiet chains of their favoritism. I realized, finally, that revenge doesn't need violence. Revenge can be soft, subtle, a whisper in the halls where they once tried to control you. Revenge can be peace. Revenge can be success. Revenge can be the quiet knowledge that you have chosen yourself over those who sought to diminish you, and I smiled softly as I looked out the window of my apartment months later. My grandfather's words echoing in my mind, justice is not loud. I had justice. Quiet, elegant, undeniable. And for the first time in my life, I felt whole.